Well, on to Iran now, where the country has issued one of its strongest warnings yet to the United States of America. It has warned that any American attempt to assassinate or remove the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, would be treated as declaration of war. The warning comes amid escalating rhetoric from U.S. President Donald Trump, growing anti-government protests inside Iran, and reports that Washington came close to launching military strikes before pulling back at the last moment. The Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, made this warning explicit on Sunday last, saying, and I quote him, "An attack on the great leader of our country is tantamount to a full-scale war with the Iranian nation," unquote. Remember, the statement follows mounting speculation that Donald Trump is considering steps to remove or even assassinate Iran's supreme leader. A claim that, although Trump has not directly made, it has been fueled due to two reasons. Number one is that Trump's been increasingly aggressive in his language against Iran. And two, his administration's recent seizure of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. In a recent interview with Politico, the U.S. president had described Khamenei as, quote, "a sick man who should run his country properly and stop killing people." He also openly called for an end to his nearly 40-year rule. Iranian leadership, meanwhile, sees that rhetoric not as political posturing but as an existential threat. President Pezeshkian also accused the U.S. of actively fueling the unrest in Iran that has shaken the country over the past 2 weeks. An unrest that has left thousands of people dead. Remember, for weeks, Iranians have been protesting against the state of their country's economy. The protests first began on the 28th of December, triggered by anger over rising living costs. But they quickly evolved into nationwide demonstrations calling for regime change. As the protests spread, Iranian authorities responded with sweeping force. On the 8th of January, the government imposed a near-total internet and phone shutdown, cutting off global connectivity, in what rights groups have described as an attempt to hide the scale of the crackdown and silence independent reportage. As per US-based human rights monitors, at least 5,000 people have been killed, including around 500 security personnel, and more than 24,000 protesters have been arrested. Iranian officials, however, have blamed what they call armed rioters and terrorists for much of this violence. The Iranian leadership has blamed the rising cost of living to years of American sanctions. Tehran says that the US-led sanctions on Iran have worsened the country's economic conditions, resulted in soaring inflation and the collapse of Iran's currency. As the unrest continued to rage, last Tuesday, Trump openly encouraged Iranians to continue protesting, telling them to seize control of state institutions. Comments that Tehran has interpreted as a direct call for insurrection. But by midweek, the situation escalated further. According to reporting by Axis, the US came close to launching military strikes against Iran, but ultimately pulled back. And the reason? Well, the concern over a larger regional conflagration. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, reportedly warned the US against it, saying that Israel was not prepared for an Iranian retaliation, while Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman urged restraint, citing the risk of destabilizing the entire region. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, meanwhile, addressed the nation, acknowledging for the first time that thousands had been killed during the unrest. But he blamed the United States for the bloodshed, calling Trump a criminal and demanding harsh punishment for the protesters. Yet signs of tension remain. Although no street protests have been reported in recent days, remember, residents in cities like Tehran, Shiraz and Isfahan say that anti-Khamenei chants have been heard from apartment windows at night, a quieter but defiant form of resistance. Internet monitoring group NetBlocks said that limited online access has now been restored, suggesting that authorities may be attempting to ease pressure without appearing weak. Iran, remember, is telling America that any move against its supreme leader crosses the red line, one that could trigger a full-scale war. At the same time, Donald Trump appears caught between pressure to act and fear of igniting a regional conflict. It may not be able to control. With protests subdued but not extinguished and the war of words sharpening now, the standoff remains very much volatile and unpredictable.